Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the August 26th VAR Large Virtual Meeting. My name is David Hazelton. Other board members present this afternoon are James Matters, Jay White, Leon Scott, and Ms. Luda Sobchak. City staff present are Jacob Lindsay, Lawrence Courtney, and Alex Howell. Order of the meeting will be as follows. There will be an introduction and overview of each project by the city staff to the board and to the public. Applicant will then follow with a 10-minute presentation, and any questions of the applicant by the board or staff will be addressed at that time. Any and all presenters should clearly state your name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, being owners, developers, designers, consultants, engineers, things of that nature, should speak during this portion of the meeting rather than during the public comment section. Following the applicant's presentation will be that public comment section, which will be limited to a time equivalent to that of the applicant's presentation. City staff will then make comments and recommendations. Following that, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond or clarify any public comment and city staff recommendations that have been made. Following that will be board discussion and vote. Ask that any cell phones or any other device be turned off so that the meeting, as it's being recorded, will not be interrupted. And I'll remind everybody to please limit all comments to architecture. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Courtney.
And if you are on this meeting, then you likely have read all this, so I will dispense with the formalities here. And this is a, excuse me, my name is Lawrence Courtney, and I am staff architect with the Department of Planning, Preservation, and Sustainability. Mr. Hazelton, I would like to ask you to, if you would, please run through this. It might go a little bit faster with you since you're more.
Certainly, I'll go through the meeting protocols, Mr. Courtney, and I appreciate that. I would ask anybody speaking to introduce themselves as they speak, so that we do know who all is talking. Meeting protocol will be as follows. The staff will control the presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with and in accordance with the federal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during the presentation, and I believe Mr. Howell or Mr. Courtney will be controlling that. Applicant, staff, and board members are required to give their names whenever speaking. Video and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees will only be given the ability to speak when they are called on during the meeting, during the public comment period. Chat and the Q&A function is disabled for everyone. Give me one moment to do something. And I have done something, I am embarrassed to say, that has switched the screen, and I do not see, Alex, all of the board protocols that I did see momentarily. I can go through those that I do see. You know, there we go. Public education, the applicants and the public have been required to register and indicate the project they wish to comment on and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. In-person meeting, all applicants heard today are part of the public meeting format. If you have registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you will need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called in order by project. Members of the public that speak are encouraged to remain in the meeting for the completion of the item they have commented on. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. Board members should open the participants panel so that each board member can see the status of other board members' microphones and cameras. And if we can scroll down, board members polled by the chair for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yea in favor or nay not in favor. Chairman will reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion shall confirm to the chairman whether or not he has read it correctly. If the board member needs to recuse, he will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. Board member needs to go into if the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. I doubt that will be necessary, but staff will issue meeting results, including staff comments and board motion to the applicants following the meeting's results will also be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/bar. Additional information, please contact the BAR or visit the city's website. These proceedings are being recorded. And with that, Mr. Courtney, I'll turn the agenda over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hazelton. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the June 10th meeting of this year.
Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed the minutes and they're correct, although it would probably be well for staff to go back through them and make sure that the spelling of people's first and last names is correct. There are several instances where I'm aware that they're incorrect, and I think we have enough written correspondence to cross-check that. But aside from that comment, I move for approval as amended.
I second that.
All right, that's a motion by Mr. White and a second by Mr. Metters. How do you vote for the motion for approval of the minutes as amended?
I'm sorry, which one of us was that?
I thought I said Ms. Sobchak.
Oh, sorry, you blanked out there for a second.
I'm sorry. Is Ms. Sobchak here? There she is.
Yes. Yay in favor?
All right, Mr. Scott, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. White, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
And Mr. Metters, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
And this is David Hazelton. I also vote yay in favor. Moving on.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. The second item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the June 24th meeting of this year.
I've reviewed these as well, and I'll make a motion for approval as submitted.
I will second. This is Leon Scott.
All right, so that's a motion for approval as submitted by Mr. White, which was seconded by Mr. Scott. Mr. Metters, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote?
Yay in favor?
Mr. Scott, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
And Mr. White, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
And this is David Hazelton, and I vote yay in favor.
And thank you again, Mr. Chair. The third item on the agenda is 16 Broad Street, requesting final approval for the replacement of existing slate roof on 3 sections with new sheathing, ice and water shield, copper trims, and Buckingham slate. This is a category 1 building in the French Quarter circa 1817, 1850 in the old and historic district. And with that, if Mr. Howell will unmute Mr. Peterson for his presentation.
All right, we have Peter Johnston, who is now a panelist and should be able to unmute himself and turn on the camera.
excuse me, first, I forgot that we do have a few context photos. This, of course, is the aerial. This is showing the subject site from the west looking north and east. This is from the east looking north and west. This is the subject property is immediately on your right. This is looking west. This is looking east, where the subject property is on your left. This is looking south, with the subject property on your left. The previous motion was deferral with board and staff comments. Board comments, one member said that the roof is in need of significant work, that this category 1 structure requires additional scrutiny, and agrees with staff. Consider 50% salvage on one roof to address warranty issue. Agree with staff. One member also agreed with staff, but said that they needed details. Member said that they might not know the 50% until they get into it. Member indicated that there are metal cornice and other details that required dealing with. Details are important, and another said salvage responsibly. Staff said that given the condition of the existing slate installation and the fact that it appears to be Hugo error, that staff is comfortable with the scope proposed and total replacement. However, we will need much more information, detailed information submitted to address all detailed conditions. The overall dimension of the eave is being increased with the addition of sheathing. A detail needs to be provided. Also, the detail on the last sheet is in fact generic and needs to be specific to the building, including the gutter. Provide an elevation showing specific locations of downspouts. Stucco repair needs to be part of the scope of work and must match existing. And the recommendation at that time was for deferral for a more complete submittal with all critical details and staff conditions noted. We prefer the salvage option. And once more, this is a category 1 structure, and specific details are very important. Now, we may proceed with applicant's presentation. And once more, I apologize for jumping the gun there.
All right, thank you. My name is Peter Johnston, a residential sales manager with Baker Roofing. I am working on behalf of Mashburn Construction, who is dealing with the building owner. The existing roof condition is a mix of Buckingham and Vermont black slate in various areas over plank decking, with presumed to be mechanically attached felt in the majority of the area. Drip edge is non-existent except for 2 small locations. That would be rake and eave drip edge. The field inspections that we've done, a number of them, have shown that the nail length is insufficient for proper attachment of the slate to the roof deck. And there was numerous areas where the slates were easily pulled up by hand, and also wind damage. There are multiple leaks in the existing roof structure. coming through at the slate. There's also numerous other areas of previous repair, some less than industry standard repairs in areas. There is broken and missing slates noted on all roof facets, and just to be clear, this scope covers all 3 slate sections on this building, and there was either damaged or missing slates noted on all facets. One of the most notable sides or areas of damage is the State Street side, which is one of the larger sections of roof. There's actually been slate found on the ground after storms last year, and possibly even more recently. There is an area of wind damage from a storm last year. I think it was from Dorian also. That would be on the north corner of that roof area over State Street. The existing gutters appear to be 6-inch half-round copper. They are either in poor condition, working condition, installed in such a way that they are not catching water properly at the eave. So our proposed scope, and the last meeting that we were at, we had 2 options for trying to salvage 50% and add in 50% new. Our current scope will be to remove all existing slate, which is again Buckingham and Vermont in some places, and resheathe the entire deck over the boards with 1/2-inch CVX. Install high temp ice and water shield to the entire roof deck. Fabricate and install 16-ounce copper flashings at all eaves, rake, valleys, sidewall flashings. One chimney will have a cricket. There is only one chimney on the building currently, so that cricket will be installed. Install new 16-ounce half-round copper gutters at all existing locations along with downspout existing locations. And then to install all new Buckingham slate with the proper length nails. And then Buckingham slate at the hip ridges to match existing also in those details. There's a couple large factors as to why we decided to pursue the 100% replacement option. Probably the biggest is the unknown of how much is actually reusable. We can guess at 50%, but we don't really know until we were able to get everything off and actually check each slate. If we cannot use a certain amount of slate, we end up incurring a much larger cost and a much longer delay in getting materials. It takes 3 to 5 weeks to get slate pulled from this quarry currently in Virginia. If we kept some old slate and put in some new slate, I have spoken with Buckingham. They would not give us a material warranty for the roof. That is probably one of the biggest reasonings. The owner, which I'm sure the board can also appreciate, is having a 75-year material warranty on this roof is a benefit from Buckingham, who has been in business for quite some time quarrying this slate. Financially, it makes more sense to replace all of it, knowing that we have all new slate from the quarry. Lastly, this is the same exact slate from the quarry in Virginia. Buckingham has been in business since 18 something. I can't remember the exact date, but this is not a similar black slate. This is Buckingham slate. So what's on the roof is Buckingham. What we intend to put back is Buckingham, so that we would have a continuous new roof condition and be able to get that material warranty from the quarry. That being said, I don't have anything further at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is there any are there any questions for the applicant from the board?
Yes, David, this is James. Peter, the essence of what you have described, I understand and I agree with, but is there a drawing which shows your drip edge, your valley flashing, how far it comes up on either side, how your cricket's going to be manufactured and installed, how you're going to transition from roof to pointed brick? Yeah, so that's what I wanted to look at with you.
Yep.
So the question that I had last time and I just want you to talk me through it here. When I looked at this online, I was unclear if these were, from the manufacturer's book, or were some of these drawn specifically for the building?
These are drawn specifically for this project. We, my general manager and I were out here about a month ago and got dimensions and measurements. Some of them may seem like stock drawings, but they were, pulled and drawn from our submittals department in Raleigh.
So, and I may have missed it, but when you're doing your stucco repairs, you've identified the type of stucco that's there and the type of stucco mix you're going to go back with, as well as the masonry repairs, the pointing mortar, the bedding mortar.
As of right now, we don't foresee any masonry repair as far as mortar and bricks. Stucco repair, we have not identified that current mortar composition. That is something that we will need to do if we indeed actually have to take stucco out. There's one sidewall area that has stucco and sidewall flashing, but we are unsure as to how that is all attached and put together without, actually getting up there and taking it apart. That chimney, there's that one section in that picture number 21.
21.
Yep.
So Peter, can you walk me through your plan, please?
For what?
Your drawings.
Sure. Can we pull those back up? We've got all of our different conditions identified on the aerial map, pointing to rake drip edge, eave drip edge, crickets, hip and ridge details, valley details. Can move on to the next one. We've got our drip edge detail. The majority of this drip edge will be fabricated to exact dimensions depending on the location. There are some areas that have larger openings and gaps from the roof deck to either brick or the cornice. So there may be slight variation between the face of the drip edge. They will all be installed with a 22 gauge stainless cleat for wind uplift. And again, those will be at the eave and rake conditions and properly overlapped new gutter at the eave conditions.
And you're using a stainless cleat, not a copper cleat?
Yeah, stainless gives much better strength, whereas copper is a little bit more malleable, not quite as strong. We use stainless for pretty much all of our aluminum.
But you're talking about the drip edge right now?
Yes, sir.
Well, isn't that going to be visible from the street?
The drip edge will be, yes.
So do we want to look up there and see stainless, or do we want to see copper?
You won't see stainless. You'll only see the copper. The stainless is just the cleat material. So the cleat goes on first. It's kind of hard to see, but picture 5, you'll see that stainless cleat is in behind closest to the wood deck. And then the copper drip edge actually hooks onto that stainless cleat. So there is no stainless visible. The stainless is there as a wind support, basically, to help hold the drip edge down in the event of a high wind.
So it's just the vertical piece how does it attach? Is it attached to the top of that plywood too?
It does. It attaches first to the roof deck, and then the copper drip edge has an open hem on the bottom. Not open all the way, but open, about 1/8 of an inch that slides up over the stainless cleat.
Okay. And again, some of these installations, when we were on the roof, we could put our hands underneath and feel some of the decking material that's installed over the masonry cornices it's not sound. So that wood framing underneath that, or decking material with not really any framing underneath it, it has to be reattached to those masonry cornices or somehow cantilevered out on top of it.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I know that you've got a lot of different conditions there, whether it's at some point it's brick and sometimes brick with stucco on top of it. And you can't know about all that until you begin to take it off, and I understand that. But just feeling, because of the significance of this structure, and again, if I hadn't already said it, the process that you're talking about is, I think, a good process. But the details are really, really, important. The hanging of the gutters. Are the gutters going to be hung level? Are they going to be sloped? And if they're going to be hung level, they're going to be really, in some cases you're going into brick again. Some cases you might be going into stucco, and exactly how all that's going to be achieved is really important on this structure.
Sure. Can I add one thing? I have not found stucco cornice anywhere in stucco sidewall that is flat. We have brick conditions at the eave, which is mostly where we had the opening and the voids. Some of that will be taken care of with the plywood that comes down, because the plywood will actually sit on top of the brick wall, and then the drip edge will cover any space between the plywood and brick. The State Street, the building or the roof section that's closer to State Street has a cornice on it on the eave, but that is actually not stucco. That is a some kind of galvanized steel cornice that's had paint and other stuff put on top of it. Right. And actually poses probably the least amount of problem for us because of how our drip edge comes down to it. And number 5 there in the lower left corner of number 5 is showing that existing cornice with the.
Well, and actually, you went to the next point I was going to make. Is that a galvanized cornice?
I can't answer. To be honest, it is metal of some sort. If it's galvanized, turn, or something else, I don't know. I would guess galvanized, but I can't give you 100%.
Which would mean that you're going to have problems with the water running across your copper drip edge going down onto that galvanized cornice.
Yeah, so I don't foresee that being an issue because of the way that the cornice sits and the pitch of the roof there. The water shouldn't hit that cornice at all. Yeah, drip edge properly installed, and the slate overhang on the drip edge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? Any public comment on this project?
Yes, we have one member of the public speaking, and I will let Will Hamilton speak.
Thank you. Mr. Hamilton?
Will seems unusually bashful tonight.
Should be.
Looks like his mic is on.
Yeah. Let me try and make him a panelist.
While Will's getting on, I'll just go ahead and like to say congratulations to Will on his new great job that he has been given, and we're really all very excited for you.
Yep.
I'm going to try making him a panelist and see if that makes a difference.
And I'm embarrassed to ask, what job was he given?
Chief of Sanitation at, actually, in a way, that's his current job.
That's true. David, let him tell you the exact organization, but it's an organization that owns many, many very historic homes, some of which were owned by Dick Generette, and he's moving into a position of leadership with that organization, which is really great.
Good.
Doesn't look like his audio is coming through. We do have a letter from him as a backup.
We do.
If we want to read that.
And I'll pull that up. I can read it, and if he joins us, you can also chime in. And this is a letter from the Historic Charleston Foundation regarding 16 Broad Street. Reads as Historic Charleston Foundation is generally comfortable with this application, understanding that the majority of the slate in question is not historic Hurricane Hugo era material. The removal of the slate is proposed, but we would like to see as much of the slate salvaged as possible. And that is the note we have from Historic Charleston Foundation. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Hazelton. Our comments are a little bit more lengthy than they perhaps might be, but because this is a Category 1 structure, any work must be considered carefully. And it should be noted that the condition of the roofing varies across the shown locations. And I'm sorry, my screen is, there we go. A more detailed evaluation of the existing conditions should be well documented, and if found to be historic, at least in places, the Secretary of the Interior's standards for the treatment of historic properties, as well as the National Park Service Preservation Brief number 29, the repair, replacement, and maintenance of historic slate roofs should govern. While there is no information specifically given on the age of the roofing, previous staff comments indicate that it is of the Hugo era. If further investigation finds that it is historic, the roofing should remain and be repaired in place to the extent possible per the documents noted above. If removal is necessary, it should be done carefully with the reuse of as much of the existing slate roofing as is possible, supplementing it with similar material. If total removal and replacement of the roof is necessary, applicant's strategy appears to be sound but is incomplete and includes various elements not included on the application, such as gutters and downspouts specifically noted, as well as a chimney cricket, possible removal of a roof patch, etc., as well as information on how differences in the thickness of new materials will affect profiles. These will need to be evaluated on site and worked through in an ad hoc manner. It is also unclear who is to perform the work noted as by others and how this work is to be accomplished. Staff's recommendation. Although information is still lacking and details must be furnished prior to work, staff is comfortable working through these details with the applicant and recommends final approval with staff and board comments with final review by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. Discussion from the board.
Well, I'll kick it off and be brief for once. I remember going up on this roof prior, and in my estimation, it probably is generally a Hugo era roof. So we're replacing in. It seems like this proposal is a replacement exactly in kind, and I know there's a lot of details that'll have to be worked out in collaboration with staff, but I'm comfortable with the proposal and with staff's recommendation.
So, I mean, I'll go next. I also have memory of the roof work that was done post-Hugo there as we were working on adjacent structures. So I agree that with the approach of actually replacing the slate. But I do have concerns, again, primarily because this is a Category 1 building and because there are a lot of different surfaces that come together throughout this roof. In addition to that, the placement of the gutters is critical on the outside of the building. If in fact, it's hard for me to imagine we're not going to get into some type of stucco work or mortar work for bricks. And I think it's important to have that tested and to use the appropriate materials. All of these things are very doable. I'm in favor of this project moving forward, and I think it needs to move forward. I think it's great. But I would actually like to give it preliminary approval and have the plans come back with all of this stuff on it, because this is planning, right? And I understand sending it back to the staff, but there's an enormous amount of review that's involved in it, and I'm not sure why we don't have that information here to look at it. When you start talking about placement of gutters on the outside of this building, I think it's important. I'm in favor of it. I think it should be moved forward, but I'd like to give it a preliminary review rather than a final review.
Is the a reason why we wouldn't have that information in front of us because they hadn't pulled things up and started digging into what may be underneath?
So David, some of that,
you, Mr. Meadows, I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah, some of that's completely true, but having spent time on the roof with some of you, I can't. There's no reason that we can't have where all of the gutters and downspouts are going to be located. There's no reason why we can't have the. I mean, I can't imagine that we're not going to get into knowledge about the cornice it being galvanized or not galvanized. At least it ought to be thought about and studied, and the isolation of the two metals. And it may not be an issue, and that's great. We'll just say it's not an issue. I think that the stucco needs to be looked at and matched. I think the mortar needs to be looked at and matched. Otherwise, all of this is going to be done during the project. And, you know, my experience with this type of project is that makes it difficult on the project itself. So I don't think there's any doubt about them discovering things that are hidden behind the slate. But I also think that we know some of that discovery is going to be there, so it should be planned for.
Okay. So
This is Judah Subchu. If I may, so for them to discover all this, they really have to go in and start to open up the areas and things like that. So until they get final approval, they cannot do that. So yes, it's a lot of work for staff during the whole process, but what is in first? Showing the location of the gutter and downspout, it maybe will be discovered better when it's in a construction phase anyway. So I more agree with staff recommendations and with Jay as he expressed.
This is Leon Scott. I agree with James. I think that I'm okay with the preliminary, but I think that it should be noted that the board should have a chance to look at this and maybe a little clearer with the understanding of exactly what is going to be used in terms of slate. I'm not real comfortable with just a final approval without knowing completely. It just seems to be not as clear as I think I would need it to put a final approval on it. So I'm not in favor of a final approval. I'm in favor of a preliminary and then taking a look at it as we move forward. as we move forward.
I don't disagree with that.
So David, let me add one more thing. The removal process of the slate, given that it's Hugo related, I think it's okay to include in that plan that they're just replacing that slate. I think that's appropriate because it's very difficult, even when you're taking slate off, to then determine which one you're going to reuse and not reuse. Does it have a fracture crack in it or not? I mean, and if it were 150 years old, we'd be talking differently, but we're not. So I'm not questioning that part of the plan, but the part of the plans, to Luda's point and Jay's point, there's just some stuff there that is going to have to happen, and there's no reason that can't be in the plan. I'm certainly not talking about the stuff that they're going to discover during the project. I'm not suggesting they go do that discovery before now, before the completing the plan, but list those things out. And these are the things we're not going to know until we get started. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you want a motion, David?
If you have one, yeah, absolutely.
Sure, I'll make a motion that we give this preliminary approval, and I think that, I give it endorse it for it to happen, but I would like to have additional details listed on the plans, and I do not mean details on the plans that require destructive demolition of the roof in order to put the details on the plans, just make the plans more thorough, and that's what I'm looking for.
More thorough with regards to what? Any
details on the plans. I mean, just what I think would be normal.
As you've kind of discussed during this period of the meeting.
Yes.
Okay. So can I repeat that motion back? It would be a motion for preliminary approval with additional details in the plans as related to board comments.
Yes.
All right.
And this is Leon Scott. I will second that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Scott. So, Mr. White, what is your vote? You're on mute, Jay.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm going to vote
That's
nay,
fine.
not in favor.
What did you say that again? Nay, not in favor?
That's correct. Nay, not in favor.
Ms. Sobchuk, how do you vote?
Nay, not in favor.
Mr. Scott, what is your vote?
I vote yay in favor.
Mr. Mutters, what is your vote?
Yay in favor.
And this is David Hazelton. I vote yay in favor. So the motion will carry 3-2. Thank you. Thus concludes our short meeting.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.